Hello, and welcome to this verse-by-verse study of 2 Kings chapters 3 and 4. I have not videoed in 3 weeks because I have not taught in person due to weather and illness and other issues. These 2 chapters largely need very little explanation, as it is a good narration of the feats of Elisha. Elisha followed Elijah, both of them assigned by God to those 10 northern tribes who pulled away and worshipped 2 golden calves and who worshipped Baal and many things that made God furious. But he tried hard to give them an opportunity to turn, and these 2 prophets mainly are that. Elisha asked, if you remember, when Elijah said, "What can I do for you?" He said, "I want a double portion." Elijah said, "I cannot give you a double portion, however, God can. But you can have a double portion if you witness my being taken up." And Elisha from a distance did see Elijah go up in that whirlwind, which is one of those chariots of fire described by Ezekiel. For 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 1. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. He followed his brother Ahaziah in ruling in the north in the capital of Samaria, because Ahaziah had no children, and the throne went to his brother. Now recall that Ahab has been told that there will not be a long line of his descendants to sit on the throne, and that is true. 2. And he wrought evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father and like his mother, for he put away the images of Baal that his father had made. Now his father Ahab was married to Jezebel, who in the earlier chapters we learned was the daughter of a Baal priest, and she brought in Baal worship, 450 grove priests and 400 Baal priests who were smoked up when Elijah was able to ask God to bring down that fire on Mount Carmel. He took out Baal, but that was all he did. It does not say that he took out the golden calves or other grove worship and other kinds of worship that was not God ordained. 3. And Elisha, the king of Moab, was a sheep master, and rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams with the wool. Now this would have been tribute. It would have been taxing to keep the peace. Now remember who the Moabites are. The Moabites are descendants of Lot, the nephew of Abraham. And Mesha will wish to quit this tribute, as that would be a great lot of their herds, lambs and the rams with their wool. And Mesha, the king of but it came to pass when Ahab was dead that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. He is going to see if he can quit this tribute. He's not afraid of this new king, Jehoram. 7. Six, and King Jehoram went out of Samaria at the same time and numbered all Israel. This means he mustered troops. 7. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat, that's his fellow king down to the south, the king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab rebelled against me. Will thou go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go up. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses. Now, earlier, Jehoshaphat had agreed, if you recall, to help Ahab. Now, this is what is going to happen, and Jehoshaphat and the kings to the north do have something in common. They have what is called an affinity, because there was a marriage between Jehoshaphat's son Jehoram and Athaliah, who was the daughter of Ahab. 8. And he said, this is Jehoshaphat, which way shall we go up? And he answered, the way through the wilderness of Edom, and that would have been north of the Dead Sea, across the Jordan, and there would have been another way to go, to head south and go through a desert and attack from the south. How did they decide? They decided on their own. Did they ask God for any help, for guidance, for instruction? No. 9. So the king of Israel went, and the king of Judah, and the king of Edom, and they fetched a compass of 7 days' journey, and there was no water for the host, for the people that followed them. So they have made a circle. That's what that word compass meant. And now they have done poor planning. There's no water, and you wonder, why were the cattle following? Well, that would have been how they fed the troops. They took along animals to kill. 10. And the king of Israel said, Alas, that the Lord hath called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. Well, that's not true. How can he blame God? God didn't call them. They made their own plans and left God out of the picture. 11. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not a prophet of the Lord, that we may inquire of the Lord by him? And one of the kings of Israel's servants answered and said, Here is Elisha, the son of Shaphat, which poured water on the hands of Elijah. Now that Hebrewism there, pouring the water, means that he poured water for when he washed. And if back in 1 Kings, we heard Jehoshaphat, when he was with Ahab, ask that same question, do you not have a prophet? Jehoshaphat was a righteous leader, unlike the Ahab family. 12. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat And the king of Edom went down to him. 13. And Elisha said unto the king of Israel, Jehoram, that would be, what have I to do with thee? Get thee to the prophets of thy father and to the prophets of thy mother. And the king of Israel said unto him, Nay, for the Lord hath called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. Once again, it's not true. The Lord hasn't called them anywhere. 14. And Elisha said, As the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would not look toward thee nor see thee. In other words, he has said, he's given an oath, and he said, I will accept only because of Jehoshaphat, but I would not do one thing for you. 15. But now bring me a minstrel. And it came to pass when the minstrel played that the hand of the Lord came upon him. An example that God can use anyone, the smallest or the largest, to accomplish his purpose. 16. The minstrel speaks, and he said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. 17. For thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts. So they are told that ditches will fill up with water from God, not from any rain. 18. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. This looks like a big job, but it is nothing at all for God. 19. And you shall smite every fenced city and every choice city, and shall tell every good tree, and stop all wells of water, and mar every good piece of land with stone. So this is a complete ban. They're going to take the cities that are walled and the choice cities, and they're going to take down the trees that produce fruit and food. They're going to fill up the wells, and they're going to spoil or grieve the land with stones. So this is what is known as a total ban. 20. And it came to pass in the morning, when the meat offering was offered, that behold, there came water by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. And remember, water is important in the Old Testament as well as the New, and we are reminded that Christ, our Savior, is the living water. 21. And when all the Moabites heard that the kings were come up to fight against them, they gathered all that were able to put on armor and upward and stood in the border. So they are standing. Anyone who is old enough to fight is ready to go at the line bordering the countries. 22. And they rose up early in the morning, and the sun shone upon the water, and the Moabites saw the water on the other side as red as blood. Now, scholars disagree about this. Was it blood or not blood? Some think that it was the red soil that has turned the river. But anyway, the Moabites see it and it looks red, and they make a false assumption. 23, and they said, "This is blood. The kings are surely slain, and they have smitten one another, and now therefore Moab to the spoil." So they've said these kings have gotten into a disagreement, and they've all turned upon one another, and we'll race in there and get anything worth taking. 24. And they came to the camp of Israel. The Israelites rose up and smote the Moabites so that they fled before them, but they went forward, smiting the Moabites even in their country. So they went right after them and killed them from behind, which is a military maneuver that is smart. 25. And they beat down the cities, and on every good piece of land cast every man his stone and filled it. And they stopped all the wells of water and felled all the good trees. Only in Kaharasheth left they the stones thereof, howbeit the slingers went about it and smote it. Now those slingers would be using a slingshot, and that city there, Keharaseth, would have been the capital city. 26. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle was too sore for him, he took with him 700 men that drew swords to break through even unto the king of Edom, but they could not. 27. Then he took his eldest son that should have reigned in his stead, this is the king of Moab, and offered him for a burnt offering upon the wall. And there was great indignation against Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their own land. Now, the offering here, you had two pagan gods, to whom child sacrifice was made. The Moabites were famous for offering to Molech. Remember that Jesus is connected to the Moabites. His ancestress Ruth was a Moabite. The difference, Ruth changed. She said to Naomi, "My God, your God is my God." And she departed from Moab, and she departed from those pagan beliefs. Chapter 4, to continue the feats of Elisha the prophet, and he will accomplish 8 miracles that occur through him. The miracles are, of course, from God, doubling Elijah's 4. Chapter 4. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant, my husband, is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondsmen. That would have been laid out in Leviticus 25, 39, and 40. When money was owed, then a person could be taken as a indentured servant for 7 years to pay. And those sons of the prophets Those would have been persons who were studying in the school of prophets. 2. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house save a pot of oil. Now that would sound as though she had quite a bit of oil, but that pot is asuk in the Hebrew, and it's a little tiny vial for anointing. It's not a big pot of oil for cooking. So very, very little oil. 3. Then he said, Go borrow the vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels. Borrow not a few. Get as many as you can. 4. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. Tiny little vial of oil to start with. 5. The door is shut there because Elisha does not want to turn this into a sideshow. 6. And it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said unto her son, Bring me a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed, so it quit increasing. 7. Then she came and told the man of God, Elisha, and she said, Go sell the oil. He said, Go sell the oil and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. And she was told to go and sell, and that there would be plenty of oil left for her family, enough to live on later. 8. And it fell on a day when Elisha passed in Shunem that there was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. Now that great woman, that word great, she actually was wealthy. Now that place name, Sholem, in the Hebrew is a double resting place, and Shiloh would have been a single resting place. So this will be a refuge place for Elisha. 9. And she said unto her husband, Behold, now I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passeth by continually. 16. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set there for him there a bed and a table and a stool and a candlestick, and it shall be when he cometh to us that he shall turn in thither. 11. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and lay there, a place for him to stay. And he said unto Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, to the servant, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is it to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I will dwell among my own people. She doesn't want any of that. 8:14, and he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi, the servant, answered, Verily she hath no child, and her husband is old, like Sarah and Abraham in Genesis 18. 15. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. 16. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my Lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thy handmaid. 17. And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her according to the time of life. 18. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. He's out at the harvest. 19. And he said unto his father, My head, my head. And he said to a lad, Carry him to his mother. Now, the head likely is hurting because of a heat stroke, because heat stroke inflames the brain. 20. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knee till noon and then died. Child is dead. 21. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door upon him and went out. 22. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may go to the man of God and come again. She didn't say the child is dead. This story is a magnificent lesson on positive faith. 23. And he said, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well. And it shall be well, shalom in the Hebrew. And she will say this over and over. Her words are positive throughout this story. It does not need much comment. The story tells itself. And that it is well could also mean in the Hebrew, never mind. Never mind. 24. Then she saddled the ass and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. Don't go as fast as you can unless I ask you to stop. 25. So she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. 26. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with thy child? And she answered, It is well. She needs to get to Elisha. She doesn't have time to stop and give a long narrative and a boo-hoo story of what has happened to her. 29. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away, and the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. So he's saying she is vexed, and I don't know. 28. Then she said, Did I desire a man, son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? She did. She said, Don't tell me something that can't happen, back when he said she could have a son. 29. Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. And if thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. 30. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. The staff, there's no response and from her other than it is positive every time. 31. And Gehazi passed on before them and laid the staff upon the face of the child, and there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, saying, The child is not wakened. Well, we learn here that only God can resurrect. Man cannot unless God is working through that man. 32. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. 33. And he went therefore and shut the door, once again, not to have a sideshow. And shut the door upon them and prayed unto the Lord. So he's praying, he's doing the right thing. Involve God. 34. And when he went up and lay upon the child, he spread himself out over him, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. 35. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes 7 times. And this is the 7th miracle that God has performed through Elisha. There's one more to come. And he called Gehazi and said, Call a Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, Take up thy son. 37. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. 38. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and that's another place where there was a school for prophets, where they trained prophets. And there was a dearth in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets, or those students of the prophets. And he is going to boil something for these. Now, this is a resurrection that occurred back here by Elisha through God, working through Elisha. Peter, and remember the story that when Paul fell out of, Paul was preaching and a person fell out the window, and that person was resurrected, and of course Jesus resurrected Lazarus, but it must be the work of God. No man can resurrect. So she has bowed herself down to Elisha. Now he is going to feed. There's a dearth in the land there in Gilgal, and he is going to feed the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine that would have been a wild cucumber, and it would have been bitter, and gathered thereof wild gourds, his lap full, and came and spread them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. Death in a pot. This could cause death. These things were bitter and poison. So they poured out for the man to eat, and it came to pass as they were eating of the pottage that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot, and they could not eat thereof. It is harmful. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast it into the pot, and he said, Pour out for the people that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. So he put the meal in, and meal is used for bread, and there was water earlier, and now there is bread, the bread of life. So when we put the bread of life in something evil and bad, it can turn good, and because the evil leaves. 42, and there came a man from Elisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, Give unto the people that they may eat. Now, back in Numbers, we are told that the priests are given the first fruits. And his servant said, Well, what should set this before 100 men? He said again, Give the people that they may eat, for thus saith the Lord, they shall eat and shall leave thereof. So this is not much food, but he is told this will be enough. And we are reminded of the story after the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus took fishes, 5 loaves and 2 fish, and fed 5,000 men plus the women, and the children had 12 bushels full left. As I said, when you say, well, why do we need to study the Old Testament? Why do we need to know the Old Testament? We only need to learn the New Testament. That is because the Old Testament is a schoolmaster, and you will see the things happen that will be repeated. We've had a feeding, we've had a resurrection, we've had water. 44 to complete this chapter. So he set it before them, and they did eat and left thereof according to the word of God. So everyone ate what they could eat to their fill, and plenty was left. The spiritual food will satisfy us. Traditions like wild cucumbers and gourds will not. Remember that in Ezekiel, those dry bones are the spiritually dead, and the spiritually dead, when they are taught the Word of God, come to life. This video has been brought to you as an outreach of the Essex Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri, and the Crossroads Global Methodist Church in Dexter, Missouri.